Hey everyone, we're back going again for another video. Same terrible video quality, but hopefully slightly better mic quality. I recorded the whole of the last one and then at the end realised that I hadn't even plugged my mic in, so hopefully things sound a little bit better. I'm probably going to go for a slightly more relaxed format. Now I've got the first sort of, tepid, nervous, robotic first video out of the way. I'm probably going to just, I'm not going to pretend I'm not looking at notes and stuff. We're just going to, you know, slightly less panic attacky vibe throughout the whole video. And again, I don't want to go through this take and find that you can't hear anything I'm saying, so fingers crossed it's working as it all should. I thought for this video, best thing to do to sort of open things up in terms of like my experience in dealing with cancer, we go through essentially what is a day in a life of a patient. Really, I thought that would be the best thing to do, so I've cut it down into a few different topics. So sleep and fatigue, medication, food, passing the time, and socializing. The last two are kind of the same thing, but they're a little bit different. So whatever. I've still got like the tiniest bit of chemo brain from treatment, so it's kind of like chemo brain is your cognitive capacity sort of declining a little bit from where chemotherapy is attacking and destroying as many cells as it can indiscriminately, meaning that you can't quite process things as well. So yeah, just helps me break down my notes a little bit easier. So mentioning back to what my personal experience was, it is, so I'm 6 months in remission from Ewing sarcoma, which is a I have to cut already. A rare bone cancer that was growing on the 8th rib on my right side. I no longer have that rib. That was removed in October of last year. They cut it out and replaced it with an endoprosthesis, which is kind of like an artificial rib. So now I've got like nice big scar and weird flat patch with like a concrete plastic thingy where some bone should be. So that's nice and fun. So yeah, I make content around this sort of thing anyway. I sort of write and blog. It sounds like something an influencer would say. Yeah, just about my experiences with my illness and trying to create some awareness, because specifically sarcoma is a cancer that doesn't get a ton of recognition compared to the others. I think cancer as an illness, a lot of people get quite freaked out about, so they don't like talking about it. So we occasionally get some notoriety for things like breast cancer and prostate cancer for guys and stuff like that, but some of the less known ones don't really get quite as much recognition. I know that in the town I live in, they dye the fountain pink for breast cancer awareness one time a year, so it'd be quite nice if we could get it yellow at one point for sarcoma. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, so starting off with just sort of running through what it's like going through treatment. This is mostly going to be a video about what it's like being at home. I'll probably do a separate video about what it's like being in the hospital when you're having treatment. Whereas this is sort of just a more, say you come back from your treatment, you've got a few days until you go back. What are those days going to look like? So I guess if you're somebody that's new to treatment, or that you've got some coming up, or if you've got somebody that you care about that's dealing with it, or morbid curiosity, you just sort of know a bit more what it's like, and helps keep everyone informed, and we can all do our part, make people feel a little bit better about it. So yeah, sleep and fatigue. Cancer patients have a really terrible time staying well rested. So if you've just gone through treatment and you've got loads of your cells being broken down and you're generally just feeling quite crap, you're not really going to want to leave the house to socialise. So if you're staying in your bedroom all day feeling ill and sorry for yourself and you're not really getting out, you're probably going to develop lethargy, which is sort of like, to unfairly and oversimplify it, it's kind of you lose energy from being inactive essentially, and that's something that a lot of cancer patients deal with. So you're not leaving the house, you're not staying fit, you're not staying active, so as a result your body loses its capacity to do that, and it becomes kind of accustomed to not doing anything. So you feel more capable of just doing nothing rather than doing what you should be doing, which is getting out and staying fit, but you lose your capacity for it. So that means that, so if you've got lethargy, you're sleeping for longer hours. Your body needs to do that when you're on chemotherapy to repair itself anyway, but if you're lethargic, you're sleeping for longer hours. a lot of cancer patients will develop anxiety disorders or other mental health issues, which means that their sleeping patterns are often disrupted. So if you're, like I have, if you develop an anxiety disorder, that can disrupt your sleep because going to bed and being quiet, those are often our quietest times of the day. And therefore, it's sort of the prime opportunity for any invasive or intrusive thoughts or any other negative emotions to bubble towards the surface. And if that manifests at night time, you're either going to want to avoid sleeping, or you do it not of your own accord, so people are, you stay up later in the day, and therefore you're sleeping in later and then you're getting up later, which is it's not only unhealthy, but it's also unsociable as well, because your sleep schedule is incompatible with those around you. So yeah, not very fun. Like I said, chemotherapy has its own effects on your stamina and your physical capabilities. This usually manifests as anemia. So anemia is when your blood lacks the necessary number of red blood cells. So red blood cells are responsible for carrying oxygen to the different tissues of your body. Oxygen is what we need for respiration. It's how we power the different parts of our body. You need it to move around, to exercise, to do pretty much anything. And if you don't have the number of red blood cells you need, that means that your tissues aren't being supplied with the amount of oxygen they need in order to function efficiently, and therefore you can't function efficiently. It's harder to do simple things. You can't get out of bed, you can't go out of the house. It's just generally quite a nasty thing to have happen, and it can be treated through blood transfusions. I'll probably make a whole video about blood transfusions at some point, because I've had some very wacky, weird experiences with that you wouldn't expect from from like a simple medical procedure. They're not simple, at least they weren't in my case. So yeah, anemia manifests itself a lot, especially when you've been doing treatment for a while. And if you're anemic, that inhibits your ability to get around at all. So even if you had the willpower to get out and do things despite your situation, your body basically just isn't letting you, which, as you can imagine, isn't very fun. So something to keep in mind with everything going on in terms of corona: a lot of people shield. A lot of people have to shield. Well, they did have to, and still do, and will have to, even without back again. Forgot to have a drink before I started recording, so my voice probably sounded like I was choking on gravel throughout all of that. That was nasty, so just cut. That probably looked terrible in post, but yeah, we'll just carry on from where we left off. Yeah, so even without coronavirus going on, you've got a lot of people that are shielding, because cancer patients have damaged immune systems. We can't protect ourselves from infection the way that most people can. So that means that, if it wasn't for the anemia, the lethargy, the mental health disorders that are stopping people from going out, it's the damaged immune system. So even if we could go out and hang out with people, we have to be careful. Sometimes some people have to limit themselves. Some people can't really go out, because if we did go out and we caught something from someone, we end up in hospital and we could potentially die. So, it's not just a double-edged sword, it is a many-edged sword. It's like a mace with many different edges, constantly clubbing you over the head and introducing you to all sorts of nastiness that gets in the way of the things you'd want to do. So it all, it's a different series of factors, and because there's so many, it's kind of hard to pin on and treat. I know from my personal experience, insomnia has been quite a big problem since around the time I started treatment. So before I was diagnosed and started chemotherapy, I was working 9 to 5, so I was in a routine. I was going out and doing stuff, and quite busy. So I was wasn't great, but in a more regular sleep schedule. That's a new one. Sleep schedule. There we go. And when you're doing treatment and you really don't have much to do apart from feeling ill and feeling upset, then, and you're not sleeping enough, and you've got anxiety creeping in and waking you up or stopping you from going to sleep, then you're going to develop insomnia. That's what I've been dealing with and what I'm trying to get sorted at the minute. The main breakthroughs I've had with treating my insomnia at the minute has been by addressing some of its root causes. So primarily my anxiety disorder, which tends to manifest typically at night time when I am trying to rest. And by managing that with medication, then that's enabled me to get more sleep, and then overall I feel a bit more healthy. So, you know, I'm a testament to the fact that having a healthy sleep schedule and getting the rest that you need and that people recommend is gonna get you in general feeling a lot better with things. So, oh, and that's a note I made as well. My theory is that when it comes to anxiety, and I don't know if there are any other patients that empathise with this, so you're feeling nervous at night, it's not just because you're having intrusive thoughts. I prefer staying up late at night, like I'm recording at night time now. Doctors can't get in touch with you at night time, so you're not sat by your phone waiting for a phone call that tells you you've got to go for a scan or you have an appointment or there's any nastiness coming your way. You can just exist without the stress of, you know, people reminding you of what's wrong with you. So I know that that's my personal experience, and it'd be interesting if other people agree that staying up at night is calmer in general for patients, because we don't have to worry about other, you know, other influences making you feel more nervous or unwell. So yeah, moving on to medication. Cancer patients are on a lot of tablets in order to maintain their health and keep the side effects at bay. I know that for a lot of people, you know, viewing that don't have a huge experience with cancer, they'll know about what I call the big three. So the big three are basically the three main symptoms that people will recognise when it comes to cancer, and those are fatigue, hair loss, and sickness. So I always say to people when I talk about my experiences, or on a couple of occasions where I'm further into my treatment and I've spoken to people that are slightly newer to it, that, you know, I always tell them, you're going to be bored, you're going to be sick, and you're going to be tired. And in mainstream media, that's probably reflected the most. In reality, and it would probably take a whole video just to talk about this, the side effects of chemotherapy are far more diverse than simply three, and we do a disservice to people and their trauma and their suffering by, you know, by minimizing it down to those three. But so with such a huge array of side effects, that naturally means that there's going to be a large array of medications that we use to treat them. So I've sort of made a note of, I've not gone through all the names because I know that there's, you know, I don't want it to come across as like a list, you know, like, you know, top 5 cancer drugs list, you know, part 5, watchmojo.com. I'm just going to go through categories, you know, roughly what they do and how they help me and whether they were enjoyable. Not the fun type of drug, unfortunately. I only got to do that around the time of my surgery. I got to take some strong painkillers and got to hallucinate watching the Scooby-Doo movies, the live action ones that came out when I was a kid, and that's about as fun as cancer got, really. So yeah, none of the fun ones here. So the main one that you've probably already assumed is anti-sickness medication. So most patients are probably on about 3 to 4 of these. It depends on how severely it affects you. These days, we're able to manage sickness so effectively in some patients that it isn't even really an issue. I think the couple of times I was sick, I think I might have had it once related to chemo when, you know, maybe when I dropped the ball slightly with taking my meds, but a lot of the times when I have it, it was more related to anxiety and things like that than it was, you know, chemotherapy induced, which is quite a surprise because going in I thought, I'm really not looking forward to being ill all the time. I would have my fan on so I wouldn't have to keep taking loads of breaks and sounded like, you know, the chocolate lady from SpongeBob, the one who goes mental when they give her chocolate. That's probably what I sound like right now. I've got the fan off, so you've not got like an annoying buzzing noise in the background. So apologies if I have to keep stopping and taking loads of takes, but that's just how it's going to have to go. So yeah, anti-sickness medication, very effective. In terms of side effects, I can't really remember there being that many. If they were sort of submerged in all of the other horrible stuff that was going on. I can't really remember. Steroids, that was a big one. So steroids are, I think I discussed them in my previous video. I'm still not entirely sure how they work because I look back on that video thinking, well, if steroids suppress the immune system, how can they improve it? You know, that was the reason I took them. It was to help improve and maintain the immune system. So, and I think it may have also been to stop me losing weight, but I actually gained a lot of weight during chemo, which is not something I expected. I kind of preferred it. It's kind of fun walking around like, I don't know, like a sumo wrestler or something like that. You know, no hair. I do have some hair now. It's just not great. It's all sweaty and greasy at the minute, so that's why I've got the Ethan Klein hat on at the minute. But yeah, so walking around with no hair, with a massive belly, you know, not not awful. It's kind of an amusingly redeeming experience from the whole thing. But yeah, I'm running away with the point now. So steroids, they do have their own issues related to appetite. So if you're on steroids, that's probably going to lead to some issues with binge eating, which I'll probably discuss more in a minute when I move on to the food section. Ironically enough, I probably should have put this at the end of the list, so it would have been a nice segue, but it doesn't matter. Antibiotics, so used to treat infections, sort of does what it says really. I didn't know before treatment that antibiotics are sometimes prescribed to prevent infections from happening in the first place. So I was quite lucky really. I only had one infection throughout the whole course of my chemotherapy, and that was a water infection. And it wasn't even severe enough to stop me from having chemo. I was under the impression beforehand that, you know, if you had an infection, you can't move forward with treatment, at least until the infection is addressed. I know that it often stops scheduled surgeries and chemotherapy, so that made me quite nervous at the time, but it was sort of like the oncology equivalent of, you know, rub some dirt on it and get a move on really. They gave me antibiotics and it was like, no, you can have your chemo. So didn't get a lucky break from that, but well, I did in a sense, but you know, having been in remission, but you get what I mean. A couple left. Oh yeah, while we're on the sort of immune system part of it, it's probably best to mention about immune system boosters, which not the fun kind like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon boosters, unfortunately, but yeah, so immune system boosters basically come in the form of a small injection which is given to typically around the stomach. That's where I have mine, and they, I'm pretty sure, they stimulate bone marrow to produce white blood cells. I'm pretty sure what they do, because I remember my bones hurting all over for a few days after having it. It was awful being around because you just feel like you've got, if anyone read War Horse, like the chapter where the horse gets tetanus and they leave him in a shed, it's just kind of like that really. It is like your bones are made out of metal when they've rusted over. That was the only comparison I can make to pop culture. I feel like a lot of anecdotes are more relatable if you have a pop culture reference, and mine are all outdated and obscure, so apologies if nobody understood. But yeah, Mesner's an interesting one. So Mesner is a drug that's used to counteract the effect that chemotherapies from the IE cycle that I mentioned in my original video. They damage the certain organs, particularly the kidneys, and you have to take that so you don't form crystals in them that you have to pass or have removed. So unless you want horrible chemo crystals forming in your body, take your Mesner, even though it smells like cat pee. Not even an exaggeration. Mesner smells like cat pee. It is awful. Luckily, you only have to take it for the day that you finish your IE cycle, because the rest of the time it's given intravenously. When you have your IE cycle, you go in and you're given this big backpack, and it's got about 24 hours worth of fluids in. So each day you go in for chemotherapy, like overnight, you'll have had loads of fluids pumped into you to sort of just get all the chemo out of your system. And you have this chart, and you have to write down, like you have to pee in a jug, then you have to test it with these strips to see if you're bleeding from your kidneys at all, and then you have to write down how much you peed. So you can imagine like groggy, like 4 in the morning, like just peeing into a jug. Oh, how much is it this time? I never beat my personal challenge of, I always tried to see if I could pee an entire litre in one go. Never quite did it. I think I got to like 900 mil in one go, 950, something like that. I'll have to double check. I've probably still got the charts around somewhere. I'll have to dig them out at some point, but that was always my personal goal, to try and pee an entire litre in one go. No cigar. I peed blood because of the chemotherapy, but not quite as fun. I think that covers all of the sort of medications. I think there's also slightly grim, Laxido and Senna. I think a lot of people have probably taken Senna or Senocot. I don't know if they're the same thing or slightly different strains, but they're basically used to help you go to the toilet and make it slightly easier. So chemotherapy attacks like the cells of the body indiscriminately, and it just so happens that, you know, the flesh on the mouth all the way down to your bum, that takes a lot of the brunt of the damage. I'm not entirely sure why. I know there's probably an explanation for it. All I know is that, you know, I have blisters and other horrible things going on in my mouth, and, you know, flesh is damaged sort of in more sensitive areas. So you use them basically to make it not as terrible the experience of, you know, when nature calls. Moving on to food, which is typically quite a subject I'm passionate about. You know, I'm a mediocre home cook. I have Gordon Ramsay recipe books because I'm absolutely in love with the man. And I just try little recipes. I used to cook a lot more before I got ill, and I do it again now. Unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to really at all while I was ill because I almost passed out cooking once, and my doctor said that it probably was better idea if I just put that on hold, which is a shame because it's quite fun. However, while you're on chemotherapy, food really isn't as fun. So it is true the sense of taste is diminished quite significantly while you're on chemotherapy. A lot of people I've heard talk about it would say that it's like eating ash, or you can't taste anything. I didn't quite have that experience. For me, it was more like individual sensations of taste were muted. So, for instance, if I drank like a drink that was like lemon and lime, it'd be like, oh, I can't taste the lemon, but I feel like I can taste the lime. So it's almost like parts of taste was muted, which was quite a strange sensation because it created almost like new palates when eating food, really. None of them were nice. Keep that in mind. None of them were nice, but it's still, you know, interesting in reflection. And it can be quite hard to eat, you know, a healthy diet, and even, you know, even if you're not going through treatment, some people, it's, you know, it's hard to stay healthy a lot of the time, especially when we have such easy access to unhealthy food through, you know, food delivery apps and stuff. But when food doesn't taste as nice, it becomes even harder because it does make you more picky, and there's no shame in that. If everything tastes awful, we can't really judge you for not wanting to eat anything. Chemotherapy has, like I say, about damage to the tissues of the mouth and throat. So we call this mucositis, which is sort of inflammation of the throat tissues. I had it really bad until we discovered a medication that could mute it. Oh, I need to know. I need to remember so that I can spread the word. But if you speak to your oncologist about it, if you're going through treatment, there's loads of different ones on different markets, and some work better for other people, some don't. But I will find out, and I'll break down the different medications that I took to stop mucositis, because I am on a crusade to, you know, reduce the effects of that as much as possible. Because forget sickness, forget balding. For me, mucositis was the worst of it. It put me in hospital, just really not nice. So, because I almost, you know, not to be dramatic, I almost starved to death while I had mucositis because I couldn't eat. I ended up in hospital, severely dehydrated, and all this other nastiness. So, yeah, you don't want to do that. So, you know, a message that I would pass on that I was told throughout as well is to, if you're going through treatment, please put an emphasis on eating what you want when you can, rather than focusing on a regimented and healthy diet. Obviously, it's good to take care of your body, but when you're going through treatment, you're going to have times where you can't follow a routine. You're going to struggle to get the amount of calories and nutrients that you need. So just eat when you can, because in the long run, you know, maintaining your weight and making sure that, you know, they don't have to readjust your chemo doses, and that you're not, you know, underweight and suffering from those sorts of problems, then you'll be, you know, that's better off. You'll be better off following that. So yeah, those are my notes on that. So steroids increase the appetite quite immensely. So even though food tastes terrible, you're going to be wanting to eat a lot of it. And that was part of the reason that I gained a lot of weight, as well as water retention from my chemotherapies and the pumps. They had to constantly flush water through my system to get rid of it. Yeah, steroids made me eat loads, but it tasted awful. So I had a really love-hate relationship with food for quite a while. However, I would still take, you know, maintaining a decent caloric intake over following like a regimented regime of food that I don't like. And in the long run, if I'm in a position where I can't eat for a while, then I'd rather have that backup of unhealthy food that I've enjoyed eating for a little while than being in a bind. Other people disagree, and that's fine. You follow what suits you. But that was my personal experience. It was, eat unhealthy because it made me feel a bit better, and it was a safer bet in the short term. But then obviously emphasized getting, looking after your body and trying to repair it as best as you can afterwards, because then you don't have any excuses afterwards, really. So passing the time, having cancer and being shielded and other stuff like that, it's really no different than what's going on at the minute. So I'm not a self-help guru, but the main things that I kept in mind was documentation. So my primary piece of advice is to document your experience. I mentioned in my last video, I'll probably grab it for shameless self-promotion. Is up there? Yeah, it's up there. I'll grab it in a minute at the end. I documented my experiences and eventually I had them published, but the main reason I recommend it is for personal reflection. So a lot of the trauma from cancer and cancer treatment only really settles in after you finish your treatment. So make a point of jotting down how you're feeling or the things you're going through, because that will, even if you go through it on your own or with a professional, with a loved one, it can only help to reflect and go through these experiences and try and understand the ways that you've been hurt and try and figure out a solution to help yourself recover from that. So I'm not saying you have to publish it, but it'd be great if you do. That's one of my points. But just, keep track of your experiences, because they're not nothing. The time might fly by at the time and you might feel as though you want to forget about things or not think about things until afterwards, but you want to enable yourself to be able to process things in as healthy and efficient a way as possible, really. So moving on, next point was find a way of monetizing your time. I know it sounds a bit maybe disingenuous or a little bit confusing, but one thing I emphasize is one of the first things I decided when, my first chemotherapy, so when I had my PICC line in my arm and the stuff was going into me, I thought, I can't waste this time. It's, my career had been put on hold, and I thought, I can't spend 9 months sat in this chair feeling sorry for myself and feeling like crap with nothing to show for it. And obviously survival is a huge achievement in of itself, but finding extra ways of utilizing your time, so by creating content the way that I enjoy doing and spreading awareness about your illness, it's twofold. You generate some awareness surrounding your illness and potentially you could see a return for that. So that's an achievement in of itself. Something else I promote is practicing mindfulness. So I'll probably make a video on that in the future, because I'm not new to it, but I'm still learning sort of how it works and trying to become more familiar with it and utilizing it more in my life. But the key phrase here, so I'll probably just read this verbatim because I'm aware that 99% of the things that come out of my mouth naturally is just waffle. So focus on grounding yourself within the present moment in the pursuit of contentment, rather than allowing your mind to wander between the trauma of the past and the uncertainty of the future. This can only cause you harm. So, like I say, you can only find, peace and, you can only feel settled within the moment you're in right now. That's not going to be in the past where you've been feeling unwell and dealing with side effects and, hating the world and everything. And then in the future, if you're scared about how your condition might progress, or if you're worried about relapse, or just generally readjusting to life after your treatment, then you're not going to feel content allowing your mind to be in those places. And when you're ill, you have all the time in the world to be in those places. So practicing keeping yourself grounded through whatever hobbies you can find. So if you play video games, I wouldn't advocate for spending all of your time in front of screens. I know that sounds like a boomer comment, but try and find just something to pass the time so you're not obsessing over your situation in unhealthy ways. And then, the final point is stay active within the boundary of your illness. So if you feel terrible, still try and push yourself to go for a walk at least around the block. I know my family forced me out of the house a lot. So I have to give credit to them for that, because I would not have stayed active on my own back at all during treatment. So if you think about it like a slope or like a graph, your stamina and physical capability is going to decline immensely over the course of your treatment. Whatever physical activity you do to try and keep yourself, keep yourself healthy, that's going to create less of a struggle to return to your previous state of health after treatment. So if you've got, if you're going out for walks, then it's going to be a lot easier to get back into, say, going for a run, because you've obviously been maintaining your stamina a bit more than you would do if you were just sat at home, which is easier said than done. So, I'm not an expert on the subject. I just, I managed to fumble my way through, and I'm still here. But those were my experiences with it. And I guess just rounding things off with socialising, I haven't got loads of points in here because a lot of it's to do with getting out of the house, which is difficult when you're going through treatment. But I mean, we live in the age of social media, so even if you can't go out and see people in person, then there's a lot of opportunities to communicate with people online. So through social networking, if you play video games, there's voice chat. I would always say to try and work your way into some sort of online community. So there's a surprisingly large online cancer community of young people and adults who've gone through treatment and made it through the other side, or who are still going through it, who enjoy sharing their experiences and generating some awareness. This is just another form of that. So I've made content for probably about 6 to 8 months now in some form or another, and this is another version of that. And there's a lot of people who do it far better than I do that you should look for and reach out to. You never know, you might find someone who's got the same illness as you, and they can give you some advice, or you can simply just relate over your experiences. And I think that's a very important thing for people to have. And if you don't know about it, or you know somebody who doesn't know about it, then tell them about it and explore it, because it can only really help. I think that rounds it off, really. I've got to the end of my notes, and I'm going to try and end it before this just becomes another, series of waffle like the last one did. So I'm closing it. So hopefully this was a bit better this time, a bit less waffly. I'll probably make one within the next couple of weeks. I'm going back to work around that time, so I'll try and find something good to talk about. But if you've taken the time to get to this point, if you enjoyed it and it wasn't complete crap, then feel free to leave some constructive criticism, or tell me to go away. Or if you enjoyed it, then that'd be cool to find out about as well. So hopefully see you in the future again. So thank you everyone.